talk about Poetic Justice, which I had never seen before. Of the three movies we're going to talk about tonight, the one that I had the most closest relationship to was Higher Learning. I have seen that one a bunch of times. I love Higher Learning. I just showed it to my kids. It has got some of the unintentionally funniest lines in almost any movie I've ever seen. I will talk about this at length when we get to the movie, but my son and I were joking that Higher Learning was misnamed. It should have been called Heavy Handed. It is as it is as subtle as a kick to the face.
Oh, I mean, what would you expect? I mean, John Singleton is known for his very in your face, ham-handed movies.
Yeah.
There's no reason for Keenan Ivory Wayans to show up in the yell message, because you definitely get the message.
But I had never seen Poetic Justice before, nor had I seen Baby Boy, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when we get to Baby Boy. But sticking with Poetic Justice, it's known as a street romance, and as I get older, I'm more tolerant of different genres of film. I'm more interested in talking about them because I am so bored and so disappointed by a lot of the science fiction and fantasy that I've loved over the years because of their mismanagement by the companies that own them, that I'm really looking to other genres, other types of films, older films that find that same level of joy. So back in the day, I actively avoided Poetic Justice. I was not interested. As much as I like Tupac, a street love story featuring Janet Jackson in 1993, when I'm, a junior in high school rather, did not appeal to me. We'll talk about how the movie goes in just a second, but having seen the movie now, I don't know if I would have appreciated it back when I was in 11th grade. As an almost 50-year-old and having, a steady diet of films of every variety, I definitely can appreciate it now more than I would have back then. Also, a lot of life experience has definitely shifted my point of view, much more so that I could appreciate what he was trying to get across in Poetic Justice. What about you, Jason? Did you see it when it came out? Is this your first viewing of it?
No, I see that. It wasn't when it first came out. It was a little bit later on in life. A girl I was dating rented it, and we watched it. And as the horny teenager I was when I watched it, yeah, it was on the background. Let's just say that. We didn't really, it was. I'm kind of in the same um, field as you. Watched it back then. I didn't have the appreciation that I do now, as later on life experience and all that. Getting to see it from a more weathered, I'll say that instead of old, weathered uh, perspective than watched it when it came out, because I through these triple features we do, especially during Black History Month, it opens my eyes to a lot of genres and films that I would not see or would have wanted to seek out and see previously. So watching it now has gained a little bit more appreciation than back then.
So, Poetic Justice is a 1993 American romantic drama written and directed by John Singleton, starring What Have You Done For Me Lately, Jason Teasley, Janet Jackson.
Pre nipple slip.
That's right. Tupac Shakur, before he was shot, Regina King, and Joe Torre. It follows
Regina King, who's an alcoholic.
It follows a poet, Janet Jackson, mourning the loss of her boyfriend from gun violence. She goes on a road trip from South Los Angeles to Oakland on a mail truck along with her friend, who is Regina King, postal worker Tupac, in order to deal with depression. Following the success of his debut film, Boys in the Hood, Singleton wanted to make a film that would give voice to young African American babbling women. I may have added that last part. Jada Pinkett,
No,
Lisa,
it's right.
Jada Pinkett, Lisa Bonet, and Monica Calhoun, many other popular actors auditioned for the role of Justice, though Singleton knew from the script's draft that the role was solely intended for Janet Jackson. He shot this in like just a couple of months between April and July of 1992. It was released July 23rd, 1993. Received mixed reviews from critics who criticized the screenplay, though praised Jackson and Shakur's performances and chemistry. Yeah, I don't think people got this when it came out in '93. Like, I think if you played this for critics now, having seen so much of this kind of thing in the past 30 years, the screenplay wouldn't bother so many people. The kind of coarse language that's used. It's reached number one in the box office its opening weekend, grossing 11 million. It eventually grossed 27 million on a budget of 2 shillings and a halfpenny, 14 million.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically a shoestring budget that he
Yeah.
had to film this.
Yeah, Jackson received the Academy Award and Golden Globe nominations for Best Original Song for Again, which also reached number one on the Billboard Hot 100. Janet won 2 MTV Movie Awards for her role in the film, including Most Desirable Female. The film has developed a cult following, especially with the chemistry between Jackson and Shakur. Not a whole lot to this movie. Again, when we meet Janet Jackson, she's on a date with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend apparently rubbed somebody the wrong way, and they decided now would be a good time as any to shoot him in the head, which they do.
At the drive-in.
At the drive-in. She was stranded at the drive-in by gunshot. So between that, the death of her family, she is kind of a lonely spinster, working as a hairdresser and writing poetry. That's Janet Jackson. And all the women in this movie are telling her, Janet Jackson, you need a man. And she was like, no, thank you. The last time I had a man, he was shot. And I don't feel the need to repeat that again. We meet Tupac, and Tupac is a mailman. He has dirty fingernails, and he's looking for a woman. And he sees Janet Jackson, and Janet Jackson says, no thanks, I'm not interested in Tupac Venus. However, Regina King is dating Tupac's friend, who's played by Joe Torre, and Joe Torre also works as a postal service person. And they have to make a work run to Oakland. Regina has gone on this run before. This is an opportunity for her and Joe Torre to mess around. So she invites Janet Jackson because my God, woman, you need to get out of the house. You need to go live a little. Let's have an adventure. The rest of the movie's a road trip. It's very dialogue driven. It's very stage play-y. There's a lot of conversations about inherent bitchiness. Tupac's like utter frustration with Janet Jackson in the car and him turning to like, why are you so mean? Resonated with me personally. Like, Janet Jackson's definitely coming from this place of, I don't trust men, but I don't trust men because you get involved with them and then something bad happens and then you lose them. And then I haven't quite processed my trauma for all that. So it's just better if, it's better if I keep you at arm's length. Also, men don't particularly act right, so I'm suspicious of you all. And there's Tupac going, okay, I've done nothing to you. There's no reason for you to be this way. I've heard this. I have definitely been there, Tupac. I was telling a coworker today,
Yeah.
Tupac speaks for me. There's a lot of discussion about being in a relationship, what that means, what are your roles in terms of boyfriend and girlfriend. The movie doesn't deal directly with non-traditional relationships, but like this and Baby Boy also very much had this, we are straining against traditional monogamy. Like, traditional monogamy is the accepted relationship dynamic, but nobody wants it in these movies, in either one. So there's also conversations that take place over what is the nature of the man in the relationship, what is the nature of the woman in the relationship. It's funny because there's a lot of discussion now on like social media about what do women bring to the table, and there are women who will put up social media post of, if you ask me what I bring to the table, that's an immediate ick, and I say no thank you, and this is why men don't date anymore. So if you're like, this seems to be a new phenomenon, nope, we were discussing it in 1993 in the movie Poetic Justice. Are men just wallets? Are women just receptacles for penis and trying to clean this up?
Don't clean it up. Me and you do not have clean episodes. This is why we. This is your space, safe space from Robert.
Okay. But yeah, semen. That's what I was looking for. Are women just receptacles? Cum dumpsters. That's the technical word. That's all? Is that all they are? Is that all they're useful for? Or are men just ATM machines? These are the things that are considered on this road trip in this movie. There's also issues of provocation and domestic violence that come up. Also, what is the proper etiquette for crashing a barbecue? If you're, if black people are
That is
having
the best part.
that is the best part of this movie. If black people
Yes.
are seen having a barbecue, what are you supposed to do? Obviously, we're all family when it comes to barbecue. You know what I mean, Jason?
Well, I mean, in 2025, if you're invited to the barbecue, you're in like Flynn. I mean, everybody wants invited to the barbecue. They just happened to be invited to. They wasn't invited. They just showed up.
Yep. But they were there. They were accepted as part of the family until domestic violence broke out. Um, the last thing I'm going to bring up, because again, there's really no plot to this. It just follows them on this vacation. They go up, they go down. She writes poetry. Robert would refer to it as Tumblr poetry, but this is 1993 and Tumblr wasn't a thing yet. He is working on music with his cousin, and wouldn't you know it, because this film has to go somewhere at some point. The cousin gets killed, and
As
Tupac.
they pull up.
Yeah. Timing
What
is
great
everything.
timing.
Yeah. So Tupac convinces his cousin's parents to give him the recording equipment so he can do something with it. I have a major problem with what happens next regarding the music and the poetry in this movie, but I'll get there in a moment. In any case, they do, and because he is distraught over the death of his cousin, he goes off on Janet Jackson. Like, just they had hooked up by this point. They were starting to fall in love, and then the cousin dies, and he handles it poorly. He does not have the coping skills. So he blows up on her, and her heart's broken now because, oh, look at that. The one time I open up my heart to a man, he acts shitty to me. First chance he gets. So they go back home, and he kind of shakes it off, and then he finds her again, and he apologizes, and they live happily ever after. Poetic Justice, everybody. Jason, what did you think of this movie?
Well, we can't forget the best part of the movie. One of the best parts of the movie. The fact that Tone Loc is unfazed throughout everything. I mean, he's the most chill person ever. Um, and he's just the smoothest, most chill person ever. Even though his girl, who is Tupac's baby mama, is hooking up with another guy in the bedroom, and he's just okay with it. He's just chill.
He just wanted to watch cartoons.
Yeah, he's just laid back. I mean, like we all wish we could be.
Sipping on gin
But
and juice.
but this movie is very dialect driven. It explores a lot of things heavy handedly, especially the trauma, the domestic violence, the fact that after you punch somebody, the biggest disrespect is to throw the comb away from them as you drive before driving away. That is very important. When he punches Chicago and then throws his comb, you see the dynamics of jealousy through from Chicago toward Tupac, um, because he's always any chance he gets, he's always taking a shot or throwing a throwing a slide jab or backhand comment to Tupac, like telling him that you know Janet Jackson's not in his league, that the rap um, the rap dream is bullshit. He shouldn't even
Joe Torre's
waste
character
his
of
time.
Chicago is everybody I hate right now in my life, and I am trying to either communicate with in a way that says this behavior is unacceptable or just cut out entirely. The incessantly negative, cutting down, unsupportive piece of shit where no matter how hard you try, no matter what you do, there they are complaining, criticizing, offering no suggestions. I have a constant refrain in my head of it's so easy to just tear things down and offer nothing constructive than it is to actually try to build something. I am really trying to limit those kinds of people in my life. And there's Tupac saying exactly the same thing in this movie.
Yeah, but I mean, you can handle it like Tupac. Take a road trip, smack the shit out of them, and throw the brush into the ocean.
Leave
I
some
mean,
bitch on the side of the road.
yeah, leave him on the side of the road. Who knows? We don't know if Chicago lived or died. Last time we seen, he's probably still searching for his brush in the ocean.
What an adventure that we need to make that movie, The Adventures of Chicago, as he searches for his comb, and see what fairylands it takes him to.
How about this? How about the new Pantsless production is me and you remaking Poetic Justice,
Mm-hmm.
and I played the part of Chicago, and you're Tupac.
Okay. Just gonna whine
So
incessantly about negative people.
and then instead of after I get kicked out, and you throw my comb. We'll just follow Chicago for the rest of the movie, searching for his comb in the ocean.
Okay.
We'll do flashbacks and stuff. I mean, you do live in Florida. I mean, we could make it on a shoestring budget. But
Anyway,
this is a movie that, if it would have been made 10 years later, would have had critical acclaim.
Yeah.
And that I say that for a lot of John Singleton movies. I think John Singleton was way ahead of his time. And a lot of his movies,
the world was not ready for John Singleton.
right? The movies he made took on some really hot button topics,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the black community. And I don't think 1993 and that era. I mean, we're just coming out of the Rodney King stuff and all that. There's very huge racial division and racial tensions. And I don't think that, one side was really seeing these movies um, unbiased.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that a little bit more when we get to higher learning. But Poetic Justice was definitely ahead of its time because it is a very talky movie. It's very story driven. And you really see the fact that Tupac, his charisma comes across the screen in buckets. I mean, you see
We
that he
said
can
that with
play
Above the Rim.
yeah.
His charisma carries his performance
Well, you
way
see
over
it
the
a little bit.
line.
You see it a bit more in this because he's got to go through a lot of range. He's got to
Mm-hmm.
do the angry black man. He's got to be the sympathetic shoulder to cry on. He has to go through a lot of range in this movie, and you get to see it in droves. And that's one thing I wish he would have done more is he would have went out. If he hadn't died, that kind of put it into his career indefinitely. But I would have liked to see what he could have done in film a little bit more because I think he could have been a good leading man and had a second resurgence of his career.
Yeah, I think had he gotten away from Suge Knight and he had gotten himself a proper agent and really kind of I don't get caught up in the example because it's the model that I'm pointing to. The Rock for a while really just turned away from anything that was distracting from acting. And he took as many parts as he could get in as many genres as he could get because he didn't want to, he wanted to get as much work that he could and he wanted to be successful at acting and he couldn't be if he only did one kind of thing. Eventually the rope would have run out. He also, I think, went to acting school. The Rock really did what he needed to do to reinvent himself as an actor in Hollywood. And I think if Tupac had done the Rock model and not been shot, he would have been in all kinds of. We would be talking about a guy who was versatile, who was genre bending, who had a second life as a Academy Award nominated actor. Tupac was really a special guy, and it's a shame that it's a shame he was snuffed out before the world could see what he could really do because all people know him as is the gangster rapper and was in a couple of street films. Like if you look at his filmography, he didn't get very far after Higher Learning, after Poetic Justice. But imagine somebody could speak to him and somebody could get between him and Suge Knight and send Suge Knight back to his home planet, what kind of world we would have been living in with a live and active and
Okay,
successful Tupac.
where? Okay, let's play. I want to play devil's advocate here.
Hmm.
Whose career would you say that Tupac would have had? Like a Chadwick Boseman, a um, Cuba Gooding Jr. Some. Where do you think he falls on the ceiling of his if he would have lived?
I mean, I think Chadwick Boseman, who also
That's what I was thinking.
we never really see. We'll never know how far Chadwick Boseman could have gone. But I mean, look at what he's done. He's Black Panther, and he's the kid Fonte
42.
Mac. You know, he's had an array of roles.
Played
Chadwick
Jackie
Boseman.
Robinson in 42.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I think I think Tupac would have had the Chadwick Boseman where, you know, he was a good looking guy. He had a muscular body, a little on the short side. But I think they could have worked around that. And I think the more he did, and the better an agent, and the less, and it's, you know, if he was willing to behave himself, I think the sky would have been the limit for him. Um,
Could he have been an action star? You think, or do you think he would have been more of
like
a
if Wesley Snipes could be an
dramatic?
action, if Wesley Snipes could be an action star, he could have been an action star because that's another one who that's a good model for what kind of like what Tupac could have done. You could have traded out Wesley Snipes with Tupac and Demolition Man and lost nothing.
I was going to say, could you really see Tupac as Blade?
Yeah,
That would have been interesting.
absolutely, especially now. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the rest of the film elements, and I have one major criticism of this movie.
Okay.
Um, Janet Jackson's great. I think Janet Jackson has got a lot of poise, a lot of pathos. I think she's a very attractive woman. So, it was interesting to kind of like look at her and see her emote on screen. Um, I thought, I thought she did well with this part. Um, your characters are only going to be as bright as your writer, and I don't think John Singleton uh, writes particularly deep poetry, but the poetry he gives her that kind of does in voiceover throughout the film is supposed to be presented as deep. And like I said, I laughed at a lot of it. I was like, this is the worst part of this movie. Um,
It's about as
but
deep as a kiddie pool.
yeah, it's like I said, it's a kind of droning, 13-year-old tiger beat kind of poetry
Yeah.
where, but for the most part, like I said, Regina King's really good in this. Joe Torre's really good. The conversations, the themes that take place are all excellent. My one criticism of this movie is there's a lot of conversation about Tupac's music. There's a lot of Janet Jackson reading poetry. The fucking movie is called Poetic Justice. These two get together. The obvious choice, the obvious conclusion of this movie was he says he's sorry for being a dickhead and invites her to make music with him, make use of his cousin's music with her poetry. And and the movie should have ended with them starting to have a moderate degree of success making music out of her poetry and his cousin's beats. And instead, he just apologizes to her like a yutz, and she does the bit from the beginning of the movie with "Come here, I want to whisper something to you," and this time she kisses him instead of saying his breath stinks. And that's the end of the
No,
movie.
that's how that goes. Is she says you want to know how my punani
Oh
smell?
yeah, you felt the need to correct me on that, but doesn't matter. It was
Yeah,
come
I do
okay,
because that that line
because it's so
that
easy to
scene
destroy than it
is
is to build things up. Um,
no. I'm just saying because that goes back to the laughable stuff of this movie.
hmm
Is like you would not because you want to take Janet Jackson as this like really serious,
almost prissy.
depressed um thing, and she has this kind of chip on her shoulder like she's better than you,
hmm
but writing that line in there is like it seems like something, and I know this was come off really. uh, some ghetto bullshit rather than like having her be a sophisticated, educated,
Hmm.
brooding female that you're supposed to take her as. That's something you would see on a street corner.
Right. And then she's like, "Do you want to smell my punani or some shit?"
Yeah.
All right. So if we can get off that line for a second, because I was going somewhere with this. Um, yeah, they call back to that moment, and this time she kisses him instead of doing the punani line. But that's it. That's the whole end of the movie. Though, like the resolution to the movie is, "I'm sorry for being a dickhead," and then she's like, "That's fine. I forgive you, and now let's be a couple." Like, oh, it's like I don't know if did John Singleton not know how to end this movie, and how do you run away from the obvious choice?
Um, I think that I totally agree with you. I think that would have been a better ending, but I think maybe the studio got involved, and it was a lot of studio trying to muscle some and not wanting it to go a certain way. That could have been an issue.
Hmm.
Because, like I said, this was only his like second movie, so he didn't have coming off Boys in the Hood. He was gaining that momentum, but he wasn't there yet. He wasn't able to, he
Call
actually had to take studio notes
right.
basically, and rather than override them for the power he wields as a great director. So I think that might have had a lot to do with it, especially being a young black director. I mean, he was like 25, 26 when this came out.
Right.
He was 24 with Boys in the Hood. So
Yeah,
I
I just
mean,
yeah that and that's really like my only problem with this movie is that it has kind of a ho hum, underwhelming ending. But other than that, I actually really like Poetic Justice. I don't know if this is one I would show my kids just yet, because again, one, with the kind of things that are discussed, even I have my limits with what I want my kids to see. Um,
you
and
sure
but
about
but
that?
yeah, I love it when you guys criticize my parenting.
No,
Um,
I don't care. I mean, I was raised the same way. I didn't.
but my problem is there are some like the next movie we're going to discuss, Higher Learning. I think has lessons that even little kids can understand. Little by that I mean 11, 10, 11, 14, 15. Um, this I don't know how much this speaks to children. This is a young adult, middle aged adult movie.
This is a college level movie. I feel.
Yeah,
I think because a lot of the themes would go right over kids' head and they wouldn't grasp it. And I
yeah.
think that that's how it was written, is to be more or less
Well, it's an
a
adult
college
speaking.
level movie.
It's an adult speaking to adults.
Yeah.
One of the criticisms that Robin and I have when we talk about Daniel Hollywood is so many movies are written for children. Even if the intended audience is maybe a little bit older, they're written at a level that children can get it. This isn't. This doesn't assume your audience is stupid. This assumes your audience has taken a shot to the gut. you know, this is highly relatable if you've had any kind of life where you've lived with people. And children have not lived with people as such just yet. So I don't think it resonates. But I mean, with me being almost 50, with everything that I've been through, I very much related to Poetic Justice. And like I said, I think for the most part, it's if you're not somebody who appreciates the urban genre, I don't know how much you're going to take from this movie. But I will tell you, I think that if you remove the urban genre filter and can get past coarse urban language, there's a lot to take from this movie that is universally um, resonant and appealing.
Fully, fully agree. But I think, like I said, I think it was well ahead of its time.
Yeah,
10 years later, this movie would have been huge.
yeah, absolutely. It probably would have been nominated for like best screenplay at the very least. I don't know if it would have won, but it would have been nominated.